Florida's controversial Stand Your Ground law was supposed to increase public safety, but new figures show that the 11-year-old law is failing miserably at protecting the state's citizens. In fact, gun homicides in Florida have increased by a whopping 32% since 2005. Here to talk about why that is Farron Cousins, executive editor of one of the biggest trial magazines in the country, the Trial Lawyer magazine. Farron, I'm wondering, how did researchers determine that the increase in gun homicides in Florida is linked to Stand Your Ground law? How did they get there?
Well, basically, they did what a good researcher does, and they looked at the sample prior to the law's enactment in 2005 compared to it afterwards, adjusted for population density and things like that, population growth. And they found out that as soon as this law was signed by then Governor Jeb Bush, there was an immediate spike, almost overnight, in the number of homicides and gun-related deaths in the state of Florida. And it was all directly attributed to this specific law that the NRA pushed upon Florida. And I have to say, it is interesting. It was sold to the public under the guise that it was going to keep us safer, but in reality, it was just a way for the NRA to make more money from more people buying guns. That's what this law was about 100%.
Farron, what has research shown about the role race plays in Stand Your Ground incidents? What's it showing?
It's actually pretty disgusting, but unfortunately, it's what you would expect, from this country today. And that is that when a white person uses stand your ground defense to justify killing a black person in the state of Florida, they are more likely to get off as opposed to a black person using stand your ground as a defense for killing a white person. The justice system, not just in Florida, but all over this country, is very racist. When you look at it, a white person is much more likely to get off for the same crime committed by a black person or a Hispanic person. And it's no different with these Stand Your Ground laws. You go case by case, and the white people are more likely to get off when they kill a black person. Not just they get off in general, but when they kill a black person. It's a really disgusting trend that's not just taking place in Florida, it's taking place in the 30 states that have also passed similar laws.
Farron, nearly 30 other states have followed Florida's lead in passing Stand Your Ground legislation. Have we seen an increase in gun homicide rates in those states as well, or is it just Florida that we're talking about here?
We're looking at every single state, no less than an 8% increase in gun-related homicides since these laws were signed. 8% is the best case scenario. Other states are even higher than that, but the minimum we're seeing is 8% increase in these homicides, directly related, again, to these Stand Your Ground laws, this castle doctrine of people thinking they can go out there, kill someone, and get away with it because they just say it was self-defense.
So that is obviously a trend. There's no way to not call it a trend. Thank you, Farron.
Right.
Earlier this morning, President Trump mentioned Chelsea Manning in a tweet. Ungrateful traitor Chelsea Manning, who should never have been released from prison, is now calling President Obama a weak leader. Terrible. Manning's sentence was commuted last week by President Obama. The whistleblower will be released from prison this May. For more on the Chelsea Manning and how Donald Trump's administration plans to deal with whistleblowers, let's turn to our panel tonight. We turn to liberal analyst Kathy Aru and also Beverly Hallberg, president of the District Media Group. Great to have both of you with us tonight. First of all, clearly Donald Trump does not see the world the way Barack Obama does. But the decision has been made. Beverly, what message does this send to people in the military, people in public service, that if they pull a stunt like this, that it could be pretty rough with this president?
Well, what you find is that no matter who says anything that Donald Trump disagrees with, he may tweet about it. So that's what I think we can learn from this. And I think what's interesting about his tweets, whether it's this tweet or other tweets we've seen along the way, it's one thing if you actually want to tweet and talk about the policy itself and whether or not his sentence should have been commuted to begin with. But to make personal attacks, I would disagree with him on that. Whether it's this or attacking Meryl Streep's acting skills, I'm not sure how this puts him in a good position to being the president of the highest office of the world.
Kathy, what are your thoughts? I mean, just 24 hours ago, Donald Trump was, in a sense, defending torture again, and he had to be rebuked by the United States Senate, even from his own party, saying that it's against the law. The Republican lawmakers talked about that today, saying it's against the law, they don't want to do it. But there seems to be some kind of a mindset here. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's a real disconnect between reality and the world that Donald Trump is living in. And his tweet this morning about Chelsea Manning was so bizarre because he admits he doesn't read books. And he says he reads newspapers, but this tweet was a direct result from something he watched on TV. It was the exact wording of what the reporters were saying about Chelsea Manning. So he didn't even formulate his own opinions on his tweet. He just watched TV, and like a regular person watching TV, he just repeated what they said on TV about Chelsea Manning. So I don't even know if he knows who Chelsea Manning is, but he certainly watched TV this morning. That's what I do know.
What do you, Beverly, your thoughts on that?
Well, I definitely think he knows who Chelsea Manning is, so I think that's taken a step too far, but I get the point you're trying to make. What I will say is that when it comes to Donald Trump, I frankly don't think he sleeps very much. He seems to get very little sleep, and that he is on Twitter quite often. I've actually been curious to see what Twitter stocks have been like since he's been our president, because it's mentioned so often. But here's what I will say can be effective about his tweets is that he has found a way to bypass mainstream media. So they are trying to figure out how to cover this president, and whether or not you like what he tweets, he is finding a way to get his message out.
Well, let me tell you how to cover the president. Follow his Twitter account. He seems to be driving the news cycle every day with his tweets, especially with Mexico. Kathy, we're on the verge of a trade war with one of our best allies. There's no question we've got some immigration issues, but is this a bridge too far and too much?
It's too much. I mean, really, the border right now is as active as it was in 1970, which wasn't that active. We actually have a net zero immigration problem. There are more Mexicans leaving the United States than coming in. We don't have a border problem. We don't need a wall. And people at the border say the exact same thing. So for him to pressure President Peña Nieto into building a wall that's unnecessary, and they're our friendliest neighbor, well, besides Canada, they're our third biggest trade partner. They're our ally, and someone needs to tell Donald Trump who our allies are and who our enemies are. He just doesn't seem to know the difference.
Beverly, your thoughts? I mean, it's the Twitter account surprising members of Congress that there's a possibility of a 20% tariff on anything that comes out of Mexico into the United States to pay for the wall.
Well, as you know, there's new news all the time. It's hard to keep up with it. But when we're looking at the fence, I think one of the things you have to notice, whether you agree with it or whether you don't, it is law that was passed in 2006, the Secure Fence Act, which, by the way, even our Senate Minority Leader, Chuck Schumer, did vote for. So if you want to take a look at the policy itself, take a look at Congress, take a look at what the Senate has done, because what you do find is we have someone in the executive position who is acting as an executor. So change the law if you disagree with what this decision was.
All right, Beverly Hallberg, Kathy Arruth, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Appreciate it.